Emma wiped the last few crumbs from a table, her hands moving with the practiced rhythm of someone who had been serving strangers for years. The cafe was almost empty, the soft hum of chatter mixing with the clinking of cups. She smiled politely at a couple leaving and turned to restock the pastry case. Nothing could have prepared her for the sudden stillness that hit her like a shockwave. He was standing there, Leo. Her heart skipped, then tripped. The tall, impeccably dressed man she had once called her husband, the man whose absence had left so many unanswered questions, was now looking straight at her. His sharp gaze softened for a brief second, a flicker of recognition and something else she couldn't quite place. Emma's instinct screamed at her to look away, to hide her growing belly behind the counter, but she couldn't. He approached cautiously, his presence filling the small cafe in a way that made it impossible to ignore. "Emma," he said quietly, as if saying her name out loud had the power to summon old memories. For a moment they just stood there, the past and present colliding in the space between them. Then, almost instinctively, Leo reached out, steadying her as she nearly dropped a tray. The hug was brief, almost painfully gentle, a mixture of apology and longing. It said everything words could not. Emma pulled back slightly, heart racing, unsure whether to feel anger, relief, or the strange comfort of familiarity. Leo's eyes searched hers, silently asking the question neither had dared to voice. Could they start again even with all that had happened? The door chimed, drawing Emma's attention, but the echo of that hug lingered. In that brief moment, the possibility of a second chance had taken root. The next morning, Emma couldn't shake the image of Leo from her mind. Every corner of the cafe, every scent of coffee and baked bread, seemed to carry a memory of him. Memories she had tried to bury but never could. She poured lattes with automatic precision, yet her hands shook slightly, betraying her calm exterior. Leo, on the other hand, hadn't left her thoughts either. His mind replayed the brief hug, the way her body instinctively leaned into his reassurance. He had walked in to make a business call, but found himself lingering, compelled by a connection he couldn't ignore. He remembered the laughter they once shared, the quiet nights when everything felt like it was just the two of them in the world. Emma took a deep breath, trying to focus on the morning rush, but it was impossible. One of her co-workers nudged her, noticing the distracted expression she wore so rarely. She forced a smile, telling herself it was nothing, but in truth, her mind kept drifting back to Leo's presence, to the safety she had once felt in his arms. Later, when the cafe quieted down, he appeared again, this time without pretense. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said softly, leaning against the doorway. Emma's heart skipped. Words hovered between them, heavy with unspoken apologies and regrets. She found herself talking to him, cautiously, about ordinary things, weather, menu changes, customers, yet every word felt like a bridge across the years they had lost. When he left, he reached out, brushing her shoulder gently in a fleeting hug. It was a small gesture, yet it spoke of care, of the quiet acknowledgement that the past still mattered. Emma watched him disappear into the street, and for the first time in years she allowed herself to hope. Maybe the heart had room for second chances, even when the world had changed. The city felt smaller somehow, as if it had shrunk around Emma and Leo. No matter where she went, grocery store, park, even the quiet side streets, he seemed to appear just when she least expected it. At first, it unsettled her, a reminder that the past had not entirely let go. But slowly she began to notice the gentle way he always watched out for her, the subtle gestures that spoke more than words ever could. One rainy afternoon she was struggling with a stroller and groceries, her coat soaked through. She didn't need to look up to know he was there. His voice called her name softly, and before she could protest he was helping, steadying the stroller and lifting the heavier bags. "You've been doing this alone?" he asked, concern threading through his words. Emma hesitated, pride warring with relief. I manage," she said, forcing a smile. But the warmth in his eyes made her let go of pretense. She felt safe in a way she hadn't for years. They walked a few blocks together, the rain soaking them both, yet it didn't matter. Every glance, every careful touch of his hand on her shoulder was a reminder of shared history, of laughter and love that had never truly faded. When they reached her apartment, Leo paused, letting the moment stretch between them. The hug he offered this time was longer, more intentional. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the reassurance in it, the silent promise that he hadn't forgotten her and perhaps that he never would. As he left, she realized something she hadn't admitted. She wanted these encounters to continue, wanted the comfort and tenderness he brought into her life. Maybe, just maybe, their story was far from over. Emma hadn't realized how much she had missed someone looking out for her until Leo quietly stepped into her life again. It wasn't grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was the little things that reminded her he cared. He would arrive with groceries when she was running low, subtly fix things around her apartment, or simply appear when she seemed overwhelmed, offering a steadying presence. One afternoon, as she struggled to carry a laundry basket up the stairs, she felt a strong hand on her back. "Here," Leo said softly, lifting the basket with ease. Emma froze, caught between embarrassment and relief. "Thanks," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He gave her a small smile, one that carried years of unspoken apology and quiet devotion. Their conversations grew longer, though still careful and gentle. She shared stories of her day, of small joys and little frustrations while he listened, never interrupting, never judging. Every word exchanged felt like a step toward understanding and healing. One evening, after a particularly tiring day, Emma sat on the couch, her baby bump resting against her hand. Leo sat beside her, unsure whether to offer comfort or give space. Finally, he leaned forward, placing a gentle hug around her shoulders. It wasn't passionate or romantic yet, it didn't need to be, but it carried a weight that words could not convey: protection, care, and the silent vow that he would not let anything hurt her. Emma leaned into him, her heartbeat slowing as the comfort of his presence enveloped her. For the first time in months she allowed herself to breathe fully, to feel safe. In that hug a quiet truth settled. Leo was no longer just a figure from the past. He was becoming her present and perhaps her future too. It was a quiet evening at the cafe after closing. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional distant car were the only sounds. Emma was wiping down tables when Leo quietly appeared, leaning against the doorway as if he belonged there, which in a strange way he now did. "Do you ever think about us?" he asked, his voice tentative. Emma froze, the rag in her hand trembling slightly. She had tried to avoid this question for years, yet here it was, laid bare in the small warm space they had once shared. "I do," she admitted softly, her eyes meeting his. "More than I should probably." The honesty surprised her, and for a moment the weight of years apart seemed to lift. Leo stepped closer, cautious but determined. "I regret leaving," he said, the words carrying a vulnerability she hadn't expected. "Every day I wondered if you were okay, if I could ever make things right again." Emma felt a lump in her throat. She had been strong for so long, but hearing him speak like this, without ego or pride, stirred something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. She took a careful step forward, and then another, until she was close enough to feel his warmth. The hug came naturally, almost instinctive. It was longer this time, a bridge across the years of silence and pain. It spoke of forgiveness, longing, and the quiet hope that love, once lost, could be found again. When they pulled apart, their eyes met, holding a shared understanding. Words were no longer necessary, the hug had said it all. In that moment, Emma realized that perhaps vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was the path back to the connection they had never truly lost. The weekend arrived with a quiet sense of possibility. Emma had taken the day off, her apartment filled with the scent of fresh coffee and sunlight streaming through the windows. Leo arrived just as she was arranging flowers on the kitchen table, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You always make this place feel alive," he said softly, his eyes lingering on the simple beauty of her home. Emma felt warmth bloom in her chest. It was the first time in years she hadn't felt tension at the sight of him, the first time she could simply enjoy his company without old fears clouding her mind. They spent the day cooking together, laughing at small mishaps, flour spilling on the counter, a pot simmering over too quickly, and sharing stories from the past and present. Every glance, every shared joke, was a reminder of why they had fallen in love in the first place. At one point, Emma turned to find Leo watching her with an expression that was part awe, part affection. "I never stopped caring," he whispered, and she felt the honesty in his words. Later, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, Leo wrapped his arms around her in a gentle hug. Emma leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart and the quiet reassurance it brought. There was no need for words. The hug spoke of trust, comfort, and the possibility of starting anew. For the first time since their separation, Emma allowed herself to smile freely, letting the joy of the moment wash over her. Old flames had not just flickered back to life, they were warming them both in a way that felt real, tender, and lasting. As they stood together, holding each other close, it became clear, their story was far from over. The evening air carried a restless chill, and Emma felt it in her bones. She had noticed subtle changes over the past few weeks, strangers lingering too long, hushed conversations that stopped when she approached. The city that had once felt familiar now seemed a little sharper, a little more dangerous. Leo noticed it too. His protective instincts, honed from years of navigating the shadows of his world, were on high alert. He appeared at her apartment without announcing himself, a quiet shadow at her door, eyes scanning the street before he stepped inside. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice calm but firm. Emma shook her head, unsure how to explain the unease that had settled over her. He didn't press. Instead, he simply reached out, pulling her into a hug that was both gentle and reassuring. The moment was simple, yet it carried the weight of a promise. He would keep her safe no matter what. Over the next few days, Leo's presence became more consistent, not in an overbearing way, but as a quiet shield. He walked her home from the cafe, offered rides when the streets felt unsafe, and stayed close during errands. Each time, their hugs became a little longer, a little firmer, filled with gratitude and trust. Emma realized something she hadn't admitted before. The fear she felt was less about the world outside and more about letting someone in again. But with Leo she felt safe. And in that safety she discovered a budding confidence that love could still thrive, even amid uncertainty. One night after he walked her to her door, Leo paused, hands on her shoulders. "I won't let anything hurt you," he whispered, his hug lingering. And for the first time in years, Emma believed him completely. It was late evening when Emma and Leo found themselves alone in her apartment, the city lights twinkling through the window like 1,000 tiny stars. For a moment, they simply sat in silence, the quiet between them filled with unspoken words and lingering memories. "I want to ask you something," Leo said finally, breaking the hush. Emma turned toward him, curiosity mingling with a trace of apprehension. "About us, and the future." She felt her heart quicken. Years of fear and hesitation pressed against the hope that had been quietly growing. "Go on," she whispered. Leo took a deep breath. "I want to be here for you, for the baby, for everything. I know I can't change the past, but I want to build the future with you. If you'll let me." Emma blinked, emotions swirling. She had imagined this moment countless times, each scenario more perfect than the last, yet nothing compared to the raw sincerity in his eyes. Slowly she reached for him, her hands resting on his arms. I want that too," she admitted, her voice trembling with relief and joy. They leaned into each other, sharing a long, quiet hug that carried the weight of promises, regrets, and newfound hope. In that embrace, the mistakes of the past felt lighter, and the possibilities of tomorrow felt real. When they finally pulled back, smiles softened their faces, and Emma realized how much she had missed this. The comfort of being held by someone who truly cared, someone who would stay. For the first time in a long time, she felt certain of one thing. They were ready to face the world together, to protect and nurture the life growing inside her, and to let love lead them forward. The weekend brought a gathering at Leo's trusted circle, friends and colleagues who had known him for years. Emma felt a flutter of nerves as she followed him into the space, unsure how she would be received. But Leo's hand found hers, giving a reassuring squeeze. That small gesture reminded her she wasn't alone. As introductions began, Emma noticed the subtle warmth in the eyes of those who greeted her. They saw her not as a stranger or a complication, but as someone important to Leo, someone worthy of respect. Each conversation eased her tension, and she realized just how far they had come from the awkward encounters at the cafe. Leo stayed close, leaning in to whisper observations, jokes, and compliments that made Emma smile. Every time a conversation grew too overwhelming, he would wrap an arm around her shoulder, a gentle hug that grounded her, letting her feel safe and supported. During a brief pause, they shared a quiet moment in the corner. "I wanted everyone to see you," Leo said softly. "To see that you're part of my life and that I'm proud of it." Emma's heart swelled. She had feared judgment, but now she saw acceptance, trust, and genuine love reflected in Leo's eyes. They shared a long hug, letting the world fade away, feeling the solidity of their bond in a single, silent embrace. As the evening wound down, Emma realized that this was more than just a public acknowledgement. It was a celebration of their journey, of the trust and care they had rebuilt together. The path to forever was becoming clear, strengthened by every hug, every shared moment, and every small act of love that had brought them here. The morning sun streamed gently through the hospital window, painting the room in warm hues. Emma lay back, exhausted but glowing as Leo held her hand, never leaving her side. The sound of a newborn's first cry filled the room, and all at once the years of pain, separation, and longing seemed to melt away. Their baby was placed in Emma's arms, tiny and perfect, a living testament to love that had endured every test. Leo bent close, brushing a strand of hair from her face, his eyes soft with wonder and devotion. "We did it," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "We're a family." Emma smiled, tears brimming. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now it was real. The hugs they shared in the quiet of the hospital were no longer tentative. They were full, unshakable, a promise that nothing could ever break their bond again. As the hours passed, Leo held both Emma and their child, rocking them gently, whispering small words of love and reassurance. Emma rested against him, feeling the steady strength of the man she had once feared losing and now knew she could trust completely. In that room, with the soft murmur of nurses and the golden afternoon light, Emma realized that their journey had brought them to a place of true forever. The past had shaped them, the struggles had tested them, but love had guided them home. Leo and Emma shared one final, lingering hug before leaving the hospital together. A hug that said everything words could not: commitment, hope, and a promise of always. If you loved watching Emma and Leo's journey of love, second chances, and hope, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more heartfelt stories that celebrate the power of love, family, and forgiveness.